Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Kind Mind podcast. I have such a special guest today. Kimberly Snyder is a New York Times bestselling author. Some of the books that I love include You Are More Than You Think You Are and Radical Beauty, which was co-authored with Deepak Chopra. There's so many things I could say in praise of her work, but I invite you to check it out. Her latest book is called The Hidden Power of the Five Hearts, which I've been reading and I'm really loving. And Kimberly's also a wellness expert and a nutrition expert. So I'm just so inspired and in awe of all the ways Kimberly's used her gifts to lift people up, to inspire people, to bring healing to people, to minister to the health of people, and then most of all, like instill hope for people that they can thrive in this ever-changing, difficult world that we find ourselves in. And then most of all, Kimberly is a soul friend of mine, and I'm so grateful for our friendship and all of the heart-to-heart conversations and real conversations we've had. So Kimberly, thanks for making time. I won't say in your busy schedule because you probably, you find meaning in everything you're doing, but your full schedule. So thanks for making time today.
I'm so excited to be here with you, Todd. Thank you so much for your kind words, for your presence, and I'm so grateful for you too. We've been friends for the past few decades, over
Oh my
20
gosh.
years. And when we chat, it's as if no time has passed. That real friendship. It's like, here we are. Here we are again through time and space.
Here
And
we are
it's
again.
sacred when we have those soul friends that I think we all find and we feel it. It's different than other types of friendships that
Yeah.
come and
Yeah, no, thank you for mentioning that because so many beautiful memories flash in my mind whenever we meet up again because we've evolved a lot. I was thinking, I just saw this clip of George Harrison where he says this famous quote, "I'm the Beatle who changed the most," or something like that. And I think of how much we continue to evolve and grow, and yet all of our evolution keeps converging into this like spiritual light that touches both of our hearts. And we didn't even know that like when we first met, but it was like there was a knowing. It's just we didn't quite understand how special that connection was.
I have this very distinct memory when after we graduated from college, I came to visit you in Chicago
Mhm.
and you had cleaned everything out of your room. It was almost like monk's quarters. You just had this little bed in the corner, and pretty much the only other thing in the room was a copy of Autobiography of a Yogi. And I think it was near this meditation seat. And I remember looking deeply at the cover, and I hadn't read the book yet, Todd, and I hadn't really been exposed to Yogananda. And it was just this really interesting moment. And then very shortly after I visited you, I left for my round the world journey, which was meant to be a couple weeks, but it just kept getting extended and extended. I was doing things so cheaply. I was living in tents in Africa for months and, places in Southeast Asia that at the time were a few dollars a day. And anyways, I found my way to India on this very pivotal moment of my life. I was in Rishikesh and I went into a bookstore and there was hundreds of books in there. It was like one of those bookstores that was under a stairway. And anyways, I was drawn energetically to this little blue book and it didn't have a cover on it. And it was called The Universality of Yoga. And it was by Paramahansa Yogananda. And at the time in India, it was like 30, 20 or 30 rupees. And I remember I started to read it and it was this like this fire sensation in my spine. And he was talking about this oneness because I was raised Catholic and I loved the love of Jesus, but he was talking about, hey, it's actually underneath all these dogmas and these ideas of separation. There's this love and there's this oneness, and it just lit me up. And my life was completely different from that day forward. And then it brought me back to that moment where I saw Yogananda's face for the first time with you in Chicago, right? So it's like all these things in our life. And
Wow.
now and then you fast forward to today, like you said, it keeps evolving. This is my eighth book in 11 years. And when I started writing, when I started my pathway into wellness, it was very physical, right? I was trying to heal my own body. I had bloatedness and anxiety. So it was food first. And there was a lot of physical yoga, asanas. And then it kept going more into the emotional and spiritual until these last few books have been about the heart and about the spiritual teachings of Yogananda. So it's almost like our lives are like layers of an onion. We don't know
Right.
how it's going to evolve. We just stay present and our intuition opens so much as we stay on the path.
I remember when you were on that journey around the world and you didn't quite know like how it was going to unfold or that that it was going to keep getting extended. And sometimes you would drop me some notes or I would drop you some notes. And I think I do remember when you had, discovered Paramahamsa Yogananda. And it was just like my heart was also singing because I could tell like that journey was was a transformational one. And I knew like my friend is going to be even like a brighter light in the world as this process unfolds. So I was like really cheering you on, whether you're aware of that or not. And now I know like these last few months have been really kind of intense with the California wildfires. So just like on a personal friend to friend note too, how are you doing and how are things getting back to some kind of normalcy?
No, thank you. Yeah, we were communicating a little bit during the fires, and it just shows how anything can happen
Right.
at any time. And it really is this illusion that we have of security in the outer world. And this is one of the teachings that the gurus have always said in yoga. We can really only find that security inside and our connection with spirit. So the fires started very close. We got a call from the school. I was down here actually in my office, and then we got a call from the school. You had to pick up your children immediately. There's ash blowing. I went upstairs, Todd, and it was like the whole sky was black. And it happened so
Oh my
fast. I was like,
gosh.
whoa. So my husband ran down and got the kids. The roads closed shortly afterwards, but it was still in the next canyon. And they were sitting at the table, and my little one, who's 4, says, "Oh no, Mama, look, fire." And so we look up, and from our kitchen, we could see the fire coming, cresting over the ridge. And that's when I realized how fast it was moving.
And for
So,
your
anyways,
child to say that, like, oh,
yeah,
as a mom.
exactly. So, we were in evacuation, and the school did burn. And thankfully, the fire came within 3 directions within half a mile of our home. And, just praying and praying, and the winds let down. So there's been a lot of change and transformation and things going on in life in general, but it does show when we are centered in our hearts and internally. And we'll get into that in a moment. I think the heart is one of the most accessible points to go into this deep connection with spirit. How we really are more resilient and strong than we think we are. And I know you've been through stuff with your mom, and I lost my mom a few years ago to cancer, and I didn't think I'd be able to get through that experience. But whew,
I
these
remember that.
tools are essential, Todd, because the world is so crazy.
I know, right? And that's what makes this new book of yours like so meaningful because I wanted to say to you too, like the vulnerability, because I know like some of the themes, that you've had to navigate. And so like that was just like touching my heart again, knowing like how honest and vulnerable and real like some of those parts of the book are to which led to the wisdom. But you're right, like our heart is in the middle, and we can make all kinds of plans and have all kinds of expectations up here and goals in our head, but life has its own way. And so when we get into like more of our centered space, like you're saying, it's like in the Tao Te Ching and the hub of the wheel, things are a little bit more still as everything is whirling around you. But I was
Yes.
praying for you too, and I'm just glad that your family's safe, your home is safe, and and obviously we're grieving for all the people that have been impacted by that devastating wildfire. My parents were evacuated numerous times in the north when there were fires in the last few years. So I can just relate to that image, them texting me like fire on the ridge, like you're saying.
Yeah.
Just it puts a lot in perspective, that and and the tragic loss of your mom. And I remember how hard that was of a time and how real life gets when you go through loss.
Yeah. And it's interesting. We're shooting this around Mother's Day.
Yeah,
I
this
was
weekend.
thinking how, I lost my mother, and it was within 3 days of my older son turning one. So I was a pretty new mother. And we
Mm.
had these mental ideas like, she's going to be around for decades more. She's going to help me. She's going to be this grandmother. And it just didn't turn out that way, you know?
Yeah, and I want to say like one of the things that always resonates with me and that I admire so much in you is your resilience. You have all this intellectual knowledge, right? Like you're so gifted in so many subjects and you can do well in so many subjects. But what always stands out to me is like your grace, your smile. Your smile is radiant, and the smile itself is reflective of your resilience. And same with your laughter. We were talking earlier about how we would just laugh and we could be in crisis, but we could still you could find a way to make me laugh. I mean, it starts with your smile. That is a power. And, like that is that I think you'll be able to talk about this more, but I think I see that as the heart wisdom because all the stuff in our head we just can't always make sense of, but somehow you bring it into this sacred space and you find the light. Like Rumi said, the wound is where the light enters. And it seems
Yeah.
like every time you go through a transition, you transmute it, you alchemize it into something beautiful once again, some kind of creative offering. And so it's not just your transformation, it then becomes something that becomes a service to others. So I really appreciate that. And that resonates profoundly for me as like part of our connection and, how I look up to you.
Oh,
But
thank
maybe
you.
we could, yeah, yeah, go ahead.
You know, thank you for saying that, Todd. I mean, we've been in communication through all these different
Right,
stages and all these life evolutions and so much unfolding creatively and watching you as a musician from years ago. There's so many, I mean, it's just it's like a blink, and it's also, time expanded at the same time.
right.
And
It's so like,
it really is this like you're talking about Rumi and those sayings about how the teacher appears. And I remember where I was when the idea of this book came about. And I was standing in the forest in Hawaii. And I was, I'd written about nutrition, I'd written about, physical asanas and Ayurveda with Deepak and done meditation and spiritual teachings. And the last book was really a lot about the third eye. But it felt like something was still missing for me, really, to tie it all together into like everyday moment. I'm really here. I'm really being the loving true self that I want to express. I'm really expressing this in my throat and my beingness fully. And then it just came to me, this heart, like the heart, like we keep touching your heart, Todd, as we're talking, right?
I
It's
know,
like,
I do too.
right.
Yeah.
And when I started going into the Holy Science written by Swami Sri Deshwar and started really learning how much the heart was not just in our yogic path, but in all lineages. Think about, the Sacred Heart of Jesus Christ. And I was just talking on a podcast
Hmm.
yesterday with someone in Qatar, how the word qalb, which translates to heart, is mentioned 100 and I think 32 times in the Quran, and the word lev, which translates to heart, in the Torah, and the Buddhist heart, the Heart Sutra, of course, the Anahata Chakra. The Egyptians talked about the heart, Babylonians, Greeks. It's only in modern times where we've gotten so heady and so analytical and so about numbers and this reductionist approach. So it started to feel like, and for me personally, this is a big missing piece of wellness.
Mm.
And then we could talk about the science of heart coherence, then started to be of great interest to me. The intellectual part of me was
Mm.
like, wow, this lines up to that part too. But yeah, it was just calling me so strongly, Todd, that this is the next evolution of real wellness and health.
I hear you. And do you think that's maybe partly why you have hidden in the title? Because what you just said is like layers and layers over all this wisdom that was almost like ubiquitous when you're talking about how heart appears in so many wisdom traditions. It's like that is like the universal connector of all these paths.
Well, it's like it's funny in a way, right? It's hidden, but it's in plain view. Like our
Mhm.
hearts, our spiritual and our physical and our energetic hearts are right here. And yet, most all of us don't know. I didn't know until I started getting into the research that the heart is another brain. It actually has 40,000 neurons, and it's sending more messages to the brain in your head than vice versa. And this heart brain is central to gut health, to
Mhm.
hormonal health, to immunity, to so many aspects of wellness. And yet we live in a world that's, again, so about linear thinking and quantitative analysis and nootropics and brain training. And I've done those things too, right? But when we realize this superpower, which for many people is hidden, Todd, right here in our heart, wow, it's this amplification of everything from emotional intelligence, mental clarity, better physical wellness, vitality, slowing down aging. All these things that the yogis taught about are researched in over 500 papers. And we did a research study on our HeartAlign meditation, and the results were 29% increase in 4 weeks of heart coherence, which means all those measurable health outcomes improve. So I was just reading this and reading the Holy Science for 9 months and these Vedic teachings and then learning the science, Todd. And I almost want to call you Finkers because that's
You can
been
call
my
me Finkers as long as I can call you Kimbos.
hard for me to call you Todd. But I was just
Call me
saying,
Finkers. It's fine.
everybody should know, everybody needs to know this because free and it's accessible. We just have to tap in. There's really simple but powerful heart coherence techniques and yogic techniques to come back in.
You know what's kind of amazing, bringing up The Holy Science by Swami Sri Yukteswar, the guru of Paramahamsa Yogananda, who we love and who's the author of Autobiography of a Yogi. But what's almost ironic or paradoxical about The Holy Science and you discovering this heart wisdom is how he's known as this stoic and stern and very jnana based, which is more like knowledge and in the head. And yet it's like that was maybe just a little bit of I don't know, like the outer part of the temple, the stone part of the temple. But if you really get to know his teachings, you're right.
Well, and also one of the students or at his ashram was quoted as saying, and I quote this in the book, he has the love of 1,000 mothers. So there's this external, he wants the best for his devotees and his
Uh-huh.
disciples. Move past this delusion to get out of suffering. But the softness, the hugeness of his heart, all of that was motivated by love.
Yeah. I think he was sometimes referred to as the Lion of Bengal.
Yes.
Uh, and when you think of lion, you think of, big heart, huge heart, and that power of protection and care and the seriousness. You're right. I think the seriousness of his aura was just how profoundly he hoped people would wake up.
And so Yogananda was with him in the ashram for 11 years, and he often attributes that discipline and that rigorous training, shall we say, to give him that inner strength. Because imagine when he came to America, the profound challenges that he had when he came here, his accent, the way he dressed, people hadn't really seen an Indian Swami before.
Mm-hmm.
Able to persevere and spread yoga and spread this message of universality and oneness. And it was so profound. And it was all playing out. And in the Holy Science, there's a whole section where he talks about that. He was the first one, and then Yogananda took the torch and ran. But in the Holy Science, he talks about this universality. Bhagavan Krishna, and the one of the star character in the Bhagavad Gita, and Jesus. Really, what they're talking about is transcending all the limitations of human thought to see this profound connection between all of us. And that's what the power of the heart gives us, Fingers. The mind sees, oh, this person gets ahead, I might not get ahead. It sees competition, it sees jealousy, it sees not enoughness. But the heart is so full and abundant, it knows that there's this unique energy in each person, that we're all brothers and sisters. It's like this zoomed out perspective, And that's what the heart coherence research shows too. This is why people, they've even done research with the IRS and BMW, very corporate places. The Heart Math has done research and just shows how people can get along better. There's more work productivity.
Mm.
There's more emotional intelligence. Again, you know, whether people are spiritual or not, there really is this measurable power of going into the heart and learning about heart coherence. And it really does affect all areas of your life.
Well, I think everybody can relate to the experience of having your heart burst open, either because you feel love or you lose love. I mean,
Correct.
interestingly, you mentioned anahata in Sanskrit, one of the words for the heart chakra. Anahata loosely translates to, the A is for negation, so unhurt or
Mm.
unbroken, because it's almost like everybody's going to feel so much in the heart. Um, and then you mentioned the heart coherence, which I want to learn more about from you. But in that heart brain connection that you touched on, I want to underscore that point because I heard about a person once who had a heart transplant, and afterwards he took up an interest in swimming, and he had never been interested in swimming before. But that person whose heart he received was a swimmer. So I think this speaks to the, like what you're saying, whether you're spiritual or not, there is truth to this heart brain and gut brain connection, that we have something akin to neurons in the heart and we have something akin to that in the gut. I've known in mental health care work and in hospital and healthcare work that some people have had made a lot of recovery progress with their gut issues while on antidepressants because of how close this connection is. But could you tell us a little bit more? Tell me a little bit more about what else you mean by heart coherence or heart math or heart alignment.
Yeah. Wait, one quick point
Yeah.
about what you're saying is it's really interesting when you get pregnant and you go into the doctor and the heartbeat comes first. You hear it on the
Mm.
monitor, you get a sonogram, you get ultrasound, whatever. You hear the heartbeat and it forms before the brain, right? So there is a directive intelligence happening from the heart. It's not the brain comes and then the heart comes. The heart comes first. And so we could call the heart the first brain in a way, right? And then the brain up here in the gut. There's three brains in our body: the gut, the heart, and the brain in your head. And so heart coherence is the syncing up of your
Okay.
heart, your brain, and your nervous system. These three aspects. Okay, think of it like a triangle. And it's sort of interesting because in yogic texts, whether we're talking about again the Bhagavad Gita, the Yogi Pradipika, or many of these other writings, there's so much about the nervous system, right? The nervous system is, you know, the way we're sensing and perceiving the world, whether it's true or whether it's based in a lot of old reactivity and trauma back from, you know, depending on what you believe in, past lives, you know, reincarnation, or when you were in your mother's womb and your childhood and all sorts of things. So heart coherence is this incredible syncing up where we become not only more energy efficient, but we're able to move past old patterns, old trauma, old ideas, and we start to come into this present moment with so much clarity. And this syncing up can be measured in HRV patterns. I'll show you this little this graph that's in the book. So I'll give you an example. We did this our
Yeah.
8-minute HeartAlign meditation, which is a really simple practice. We can even do an abbreviated version later
I
if
would
you want.
love that. Yeah.
It takes some of Yogananda's techniques and then some of these really simple heart coherence techniques. And if you look at this graph, this is what anger, if anyone's listening to this, you can see it's a graph of someone measuring anger, and it's very chaotic and up and down. And appreciation, which we can self generate, which is a mix of thankfulness and gratitude, is these smooth waves. So when we're in heart coherence, these smooth waves means that there's less energy being expended in our normal biological functions. So we're more, our digestion increases, our hormones balance. This is all measured by science. We have higher immunity. We feel more calm. We're more resilient against stress, which is one of the, you know, things that bring down our body into disease and illness and all sorts of things. We age less fast. Everything from our hair and skin, everything improves because we're more energy efficient. What it feels like, and I use this analogy in the book, it's a feeling, it's measurable by the patterns, but also what it feels like is if you were to swim from one shore to the next of a lake and you just go across and you can feel the sun and you feel really present and you're just breathing, you're there. An incoherent swim is when your heart and your brain aren't talking. So let's say you hit a rock and you get really frustrated and then you end up swimming in the wrong direction and you have to come back and then your goggles fog up or whatever it is. That's how most people go through the day, right? There's 5 stages. That's the hidden power of the 5 hearts. Incoherence is where there's a lot of fear, overwhelm. You're up in your head a lot. You have a lot of dark thoughts, or you don't have the motivation to get off the couch. And then we can maybe talk about the stages. And then it goes all the way to very high levels of coherence, the clear heart. And that's where you feel so intuitive, so calm,
Hmm.
and your bodily functions from a physical standpoint uh, are benefited enormously.
And thank you for sharing that. That's what I kind of gathered from the book so far is that this is a journey from like darkness to light, from incoherence to clarity. Yeah, let's get into these stages a little bit if you're okay with that. I
Sure.
appreciate how in this first stage you call it the dark heart, and you explain that really well because darkness isn't bad or evil, and sometimes we interpret it like that, and I think that leads to a lot of these false binaries. But really, like you're saying, when things are dark or dimly lit, it's just hard to see things clearly. And this is where I think I see some of the grace of your life coming through in the book, which is like we can, once we get some understanding, we can respond to these thoughts. We can nurture ourselves through these stages. So, yeah, can you tell a little bit more about how it starts with the dark heart and where it can go from there?
Yes. And so these names, first of all, come from the holy science. I didn't make them up. Swami Sri Yukteswar laid out these 5 heart stages. And he said all humans are on this heart journey as we come towards the true self, enlightenment, however you like to think of it. We're all on this heart
Mm.
journey. And so when I started to study heart coherence and I started to work with and do some research with the Heart Math Institute, it blew me away because I could see that the journey of heart coherence from a scientific perspective could actually be classed into these 5 stages as well, from low coherence all the way or incoherence up to high coherence. So the dark heart stage, again, not bad. It's like dark room. We don't see and we don't see ourselves. So what that means is imagine if you're walking through a dark room and you trip, you hit your elbow really hard, you might kick someone unknowingly. And it's not that we're bad or evil, but we don't have the vision. So again, this feels like rock bottom, right? We've all had those moments. I've had those times. So we can be in each heart stage for a period. We tend to be in one stage more, but we can also come into a dark heart moment in a day, in an hour,
I
right?
was going to ask you that. Yeah. So it's not like just perfectly linear. It's like we might experience different dimensions of this. Just
It's nonlinear, exactly,
right.
Fingers. So it's important to have tools to know when we are in those dark heart moments, how we can transcend, how we can get out, because we don't want to be stuck in fear thoughts, right? And so these are the times, again, heart and brain aren't speaking. Incoherence on a graph looks like those very jagged patterns. So very energy inefficient. We might have a lot of inflammation in the body. We might have digestive issues that are manifesting, all sorts of things. So then let's say we make some lifestyle changes or we start to feel a bit more energy. Then we can get into the second heart stage where we're propelled into more action. So this is the propelled heart. And I would say most of society, most of us spend most of my life was in the propelled heart, stages 1 and 2. So propelled is great because there's more action, but this is the stage where there's a lot of stress, a lot of overwhelm, a lot of doing, right? The
Mhm.
burnout we hear about so much, always on our phones, working at night, never feeling like we're enough, have to make more money, have to do this, have to appear a certain way on social media, these masks and these identities. So there's still a lot of incoherence, a bit more energy, but still not a deep yet connection. And so then we move into the third stage. Again, we can get into how, the tools, realizations, other spiritual practices, whatever it is that starts to make us feel more steady. So the third stage is called the steady heart. And this is where no matter what's going on around, let's face it, there's always stuff going on
Right.
around us. We realize that we can self-regulate ourselves. We can be the anchor for ourselves. And this was huge for me, Todd, because I went from a lot of external validation. I needed to have the perfect grades, needed to have all these achievements, wanted people to think of me as a smart, like all these things into, oh, I don't need it so much, you know, increasingly more and more like I feel better in myself. And so this becomes the beginning of the end of, pervasive self-doubt, feelings of lack, beating yourself up all the time. There's just this steadiness that starts to grow. And this is parallel with higher coherence numbers, literally, and the patterns start to become more smooth. Again, health, physical health is growing. And then the devoted heart is stage 4.
Mm.
And this is where we become more devoted, as you were, to the inner world. So what starts to matter more in our life is love and unity and peace and connection. But ironically, because there's more coherence, and there's also a magnetic field that's emitted from our hearts, and coherence registers to other people as more calm and steady and magnetic. So at the devoted heart stage, things tend to work out more at work. You have higher emotional intelligence, you have more patience, you have a higher perspective to overcome challenges and problems and communication. So it's a very high level of heart coherence. And then the fifth stage, which it sounds lofty, but we all dip in and out, is the clear heart, or the clean heart, as Swami Sri Teshwar called it. He referred to it as both in the text. And the clear heart is, now we're not just one with our own heart. Now the universal heart can shine through. It's like a prism, right, where the light starts to come through. So this is where, the field of miracles, things that are not linear, synchronicities. And I have an amazing story I can share about this.
Yeah, please.
It's when you're in the
I
shower
love
and you're
synchronicities.
not thinking, and or you're looking into your dog's eyes or your child's eyes. So with these tools, which are spiritual and science-based, with the heart coherence tools I share in the book, it's about spending more time towards the higher heart stages and knowing how to get out of the lower ones.
I was gonna say, you mentioned a few things that like interfered with your clarity or your coherence, like perfectionism. I think from a mental health standpoint, some of these themes they kind of follow us around for a while.
Yeah.
And maybe some of them are internalized by these moments that we've even forgotten because it was just like a tender moment in childhood or a time where somebody said something that was so invalidating, or somebody might have compared us to somebody else, and we internalized as a little kid, not knowing any better, not knowing how to put all this together, that, oh well, then maybe I'm never going to be smart enough, or maybe I'm never going to be attractive enough, or I'll always have to really fight to have the attention or the safety or the security or the presence from people who matter or community who matters, right? And then sometimes we don't even realize that we're trying to survive some of these childhood experiences in adulthood. So I do think like this process you're talking about is about like deconstructing, hey, how did we get maybe in this stuck place, or feeling like we're still kind of in a dimly lit room trying to feel our way around.
And the words you just used, fight, survival,
Mm-hmm.
that's what it feels like. Again, as someone who spent most of my life in the propelled heart, it's so arduous. It's never
Mm-hmm.
enough, right? Like, I had eating disorders. My body was never good enough. If I got a 98 on the test, it was like the end of the world. God forbid if I ever got an A minus. It's never, you're on the hamster wheel. And from this perspective, you can't imagine life getting easier from the mind. So what's really amazing about this work, and this is one of the reasons I'm so down on my knees, grateful for these teachings, thinkers, because they've given me a new life. No one knows what it feels like inside of you. And I've been doing some of these interviews, and people are like, "Oh, I've seen you, and you're so successful. I saw you in this and this," and it's a little bit surprising to hear like that. Now it feels so much better. no one knows what someone is feeling inside.
Hmm.
So until the last few years, I still had a lot of anxiety. I still had a lot of feelings of not enoughness, right? And it's exhausting and it's debilitating. So what's really amazing is as your heart opens spiritually and scientifically, right, through heart coherence, you have a different perception. So nothing in your life can change, but it's like the research describes it almost like this zooming out where you're not so identified in the patterns and the feelings. You can start to see like, oh, there's actually this see common sense, this widened perspective starts to come in like, oh, I could see that, they didn't really mean that. That was just like an old wounded me, or, of course, I did my best and there's nothing else I can do. It starts to change. And so this neuroplasticity that we hear about so
Hmm.
much up in the brain also applies to the heart brain connection. And that's one of the things that these meditations and these tools do is they start to rewire. And I had tried a lot of different things for trauma. There's a lot of different tools out there and reactions. And my trauma, if we could label it, wasn't, one big thing. It was, some maybe neglect or not getting the reinforcement of love that I wished I had. So I was always chasing and chasing. But it really front these, these heart tools are really powerful in real time to change your perception so much that I never could imagine that things could feel so much more easeful. And to me, that's the greatest gift is, to me, real success has to involve inner peace. Because if it doesn't, it does not matter all the things that we have or we own or we achieve. It doesn't matter if we're not peaceful inside.
But in that survival, you're right. I mean, the word you use, arduous, the the propelled heart, because it is kind of like it's just all it's a motor that has to keep going. I think what you said about maybe it's neglect. When we think about the ways the heart feels pierced or wounded, it really does come down to like a kind of abandonment or
Yeah.
betrayal or some kind of shame, which is an internalization of unworthiness. But what these three have in common is both a sense or a belief in powerlessness as well as a separation. And so then when we think about how anxiety manifests, it's almost always, it either has this social theme to it, social anxiety, fear of judgment, people pleasing, fear of rejection, fear of not being good enough. So the coherent heart is really about syncing up to just what's true. So when that internalization happens or when that wound happens and the mind adopts those beliefs, it makes sense for protection as a child. Like um, maybe maybe a child does need to go to some extreme to get noticed because they really need to be safe. But then we get stuck in that pattern as a habit until
Yes.
we understand what you're talking about.
Well, the separation
The
means I
separation.
do something to be loved. And the truth of the awakening heart is you do not you need to do nothing. You're whole and complete. And as I've been on this heart journey, it's really interesting because I have two sons and I talk to them, Finkers. I say things to
Two
them
beautiful boys.
that I wish first of all,
I miss those boys.
felt like it would have
So
been said.
sweet.
I'm also talking to myself. It's like I'm reparenting myself as a parent. And I
Mm.
say to them, I couldn't, there's nothing for you to do for me to love you more completely. I
And
love you.
isn't that the truth of love? As soon as love has a reason, it ceases to be love.
That's
Love
right.
is irreducible. It's not like, but we're taught through the way it's portrayed and how it's romanticized or how it's socialized into us that it's all about earning and proving. And so we believe sometimes that love is something that we gained and then lost or missed, while all the while love was always what we are. I think one of the things we don't realize that hurts so much is not that we feel like, oh, this person won't love me or give me the attention, but we're more like a river. The idea that I could be dammed up is actually like the burden because I think our true nature is to be flowing, to be like universally connected. And so when we believe that we can't because a specific link feels broken, I think that's the sense of a broken heart. And anahata means, well, yes, it looks like you have a broken heart, but it's never really that hurt. It's just not the final truth of your heart.
That's right. Underneath,
Mm.
underneath is this wholeness, this connection to spirit that can never, ever
Wholeness.
be taken away. And it also can't be improved on. As Yogananda says, it's us improving our knowing of what's
Mm.
already inside of us. So it's not that we're trying to fix, like we're broken. We're just going down this clear heart. Is when you think about clarity, if I had a glass of water here, you say like this is a clear water. But if there's mud, if these,
Mhm.
thoughts, the perceptions, the sensations, the attachments, attachment has been a really big thing for me too on this heart journey to uncover and realize all my attachments and all the ways. When you start to clear them all out, this clear energy of you, of all of us, starts to come through.
Yeah, I can relate to that. With I get attached to a role or an identity or a way I think I could be or how I could be important in a particular way or like what I'm aspiring to in the past in music. And so, yeah, but I like how you put it, the wholeness is something that's always true. I think we get sort of stuck in an optical illusion that the love can only be real in this particular way. But if love is universal and love is irreducible and it's at the center of everything or the truth of our being, then again, as Rumi once said, it's not that your task is to go out and find it or seek it or acquire it, but to remove the barriers that we've built up against it.
You know what's interesting, Two Fingers, is, we're talking about Yogananda, Swami Sri
Mm.
Yukteswar, Rumi, the Tao Te Ching, all these ancient teachings
Yeah.
are so important now for the modern day, right? And in my community, I get so many questions and comments about people feeling a lot of suffering as something, what's part of our everyday lives for many people. They're on their phones, they're on social media, right? And so, with all these wounds, reactions, traumas inside of us, it's so in our face. Look how many people liked my whatever, my picture,
Mhm.
my video, getting attention, feeling like, oh, I'm up. And then, oh, people said something mean or they don't like this as much, feeling down, just so swayed by the external world. And there's numbers and so many attachments. We have to really root in and be more centered than ever as all these numbers and information portals open up. We can be susceptible even more to the delusions of the ego, I believe, nowadays. And these teachings are needed more than ever.
Gosh, that's such a powerful point,
Affected. The news,
Kimberly.
now suddenly it's like constantly coming into our phones.
And now when we think about like the artificial intelligence revolution,
Yes,
I mean, this word artificial, we don't even know like if the comment's coming from a human anymore, like, but still it affects us because we haven't evolved to have like nuanced responses to all this technology. So you're right. And that's what's so profound about wisdom. Wisdom isn't just true for their time,
exactly.
right? It's true for all time. And you're right. When there's more layers of confusion, more layers of complexity, more
Sure.
distractions from this truth, the more we do need to come back to some of these universal sacred texts and core wisdom teachings. So thank you for pointing that out.
One of the things about this heart work and the practices as well is that when we're trying to battle thoughts with even like positive thoughts, we're still in the mind game, right? That's why a lot of people sit to meditate and they say,
Mm.
oh, my thoughts are swirling all the time. So when we drop into the heart in these practices like the heart aligned meditation, we're actually going to a different place. We're turning on the first brain. And so it's going to a different place to find a solution than where the challenge is, which is the overthinking mind. I think the confusion and again, the fear loops, what ifs, oh, I messed up, like ruminating about the past, regret, which Dr. David Hawkins talks about so
Mm.
much. Oh, if I did this, I should have done this, this would have happened. So the presence and the power that comes when we come into a different place, and the heart is a very different energy field than the mind. And eventually they all sync up, right? That's what happens is
Right.
third eye and the heart become one. But first, to get the mind under control, what I call in the book, the wild horse mind, the heart is a very, very powerful tool.
And I was just going to say, it sounds like a common thread with all of the incoherence, and then you mentioned it, is fear.
Yes.
And fear kind of, not being evil or anything, but like confusion or darkness. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, the psychologist who pioneered the stages of grief, once
Mm,
said something like, "There's really only two emotions, love and fear." And really,
yes.
you could see all the so-called negative emotions, anxiety, these status games that you're talking about, that even the best of us, no matter how much we meditate, no matter how spiritual we try to be, in an instant we can be overwhelmed by the numbers games and acceptance, because it's so essential to our nature to want to belong, to be accepted, to be appreciated, to be safe, right? But all those status games and the attachment really is just fear in disguise. It feels like we're growing something strong, but we're really afraid of losing the thing. And so, yes, I think what you're saying, if I'm hearing you correctly, is we can operate from a totally different place and different state and different wisdom.
So the first part of my healing journey was physical, right?
Right.
And I'm so obsessed with these numbers and how much I weighed and mapping out all my calories. And I don't even know if you realized how much I was tracking things when we
Of
were
course, I didn't know. Not, I mean,
very close. So when I started to heal, one of the first things I had to do, and one of the first things I would do with
I
clients is
remember you ran a lot, and I was like, "Damn, you can run a lot." I remember.
I tell you something. We say this in the family H word because we don't say HATE, the vibration. I H word running. I only did it because I wanted to be skinny.
I
How
do.
else would my
I
life
H word running too. Oh my gosh, that's why I had to play basketball, so I forget that I'm actually running.
go? But anyways, I threw out the scale and it was this, okay, like trusting how foods are digesting and all the fiber, all these other things started to peel me across to feeling so good. And now I never weigh myself, but if I go to the doctor or whatever for a checkup, my weight is where I want it to be. There's a
Hmm.
whole other system of wellness, and there's a whole other way of thinking and going about the day, that when we get rid of the fear, I mean, I have to say it's amazing how much I do create in a day. I am a full-time mom when my kids are, bring them to school, make lunch, breakfast, and then I pick them up and then I'm a mom again. But in those hours, I have my own podcast. I'm writing books. I'm running Solluna, my wellness brand. There's so much happening. And yet it's like that time expanded. I'm more efficient. And I know it sounds weird to say, but when we're in the heart, we're not in this hurry energy of the mind where more mistakes are made and we're spending excess energy on doing things that aren't actually really important. We start to discern what's really moving the needle forward. It's like non-linear. I may have a list of things to do, but I feel like this is what's pulling me today, instead of having a really rigid to-do list. And so there's a real practicality to this heart work as well. It's almost like, I don't want to put a number on it, but I felt like 70% of our thoughts, a really high amount, can just be fear.
Hmm.
We're doing things in an inefficient way. And then there's clarity that comes in and it blasts through a lot of those old patterns.
Yeah, I think we sometimes hear that like the root of all fears is fear of the unknown. But I
Yes.
sometimes think that what we mean by that is fear of losing the known, which
Mm,
is like an interesting spin on that, because we want something desperately to hang our head. The ego does. The ego wants to hang its head on something. Okay, I'm an artist. I got something now that I can be,
yeah.
or become or maintain. But you're right. So can we have an experience with you with how, like how somebody might, practice like heart align mindfulness, or heart align meditation, I think is what it
Yes.
teach.
So let's do an abbreviated
Okay,
version,
yeah.
and
If you're open to that.
just drop right in. How's that
Yeah.
sound? Okay, so we'll close our eyes. unless you're driving, of course. You can come back to this later. But straight away, we're going to come into a groundedness and take some deep breaths. And then let's just tense our shoulders up to our ears and release a couple times. This is one of the things that Yogananda taught is tensing and releasing the body can help you sit in a little bit more stillness, right? We're holding tension. A lot of the time we don't even realize it. Could be little neck rolls, just a little bit to settle your body. And then when you feel good, come into stillness. And straight away, we're going to place our attention on our hearts. And I mean your physical heart and also your energetic heart. And what's amazing about this, you can even touch your heart if that feels good. It's not necessary, but some people, it helps them connect. So amazing is just putting attention on your heart has been shown in research published in the American Journal of Cardiology to start to rewire your nervous system. Just that alone, that's how powerful we are. So while we're focusing on our hearts, we're going to take a couple deep breaths in and out, imagining that we're breathing in and out of our hearts. So we're going to do a count of 5 in, 5 out. So we'll breathe in while focusing on the heart for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And exhale out of your heart for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One more time, breathing in for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And exhaling out for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now we don't have to count anymore. Just keep those nice deep breaths flowing. But while you're still focusing on your heart, I want you to recall someone or something that makes you feel appreciation. So, appreciation, we mentioned it briefly earlier, it's a mix of thankfulness and gratitude and awe. It could be a loved one, it could be your pet, or a beautiful sunset you saw. Whatever it is, just feel the energy. Focus on the feeling, self-generating this feeling in your heart. It could feel a little tingly, a little warm, expansive. And we're just going to rest here for a few moments, feeling appreciation in our hearts, this coherence, expanding emotion. Of course, if a thought comes in, just come right back. Really go there into appreciation. And then we'll take another deep breath in, deep breath out. Another deep breath in, breathing in appreciation to your heart. And exhaling out, Appreciation. And then another deep breath in, breathing in appreciation. And it can start to turn into other heart based emotions like love and peace. And exhaling out appreciation, love, and peace. And one of the things that the research also shows, what the yogis have always known, is that all heart fields are ultimately connected. So through our hearts, we can send appreciation, love, and peace to each other, to everyone in our communities, our loved ones, out into the greater world, and especially to places in the world that could use more love and peace right now. We'll take another deep breath in and out, just thanking your heart for its amazing wisdom, which is always right there, right inside of you. And then when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes.
Thank you for that. And thank you for that note to radiate this
Yeah.
peacefulness to the places in the world that really need peace. The meditation and the practice and the loving kindness complement the mission of Kind Mind so well. Thanks, Kimbos.
You know what's amazing? We were talking about attachment. And so often we think that we need another person or object outside of ourselves to feel love, for things to go right, to feel peace. And what's really powerful about the meditation as you go into the more you practice it, and again, the research showed, not to sound clinical, but in a month, people that did this practice, it was 8 minutes in our clinical research, 4 to 5 times a week, their coherence increased almost a third, 29%, which again means more clarity, more energy, more feelings of peace, more hormonal balance, all these factors. And the part where you're feeling appreciation at first, you're like, oh, you're thinking, and then you may have your go-tos, but now that I've been doing this meditation for some time, you realize you could self-generate these
Mm.
feelings and you don't need another object. To me, this is the ultimate non-attachment. And the research shows appreciation was one of the emotions that creates heart coherence and makes you resilient against stress. It syncs up your systems. It makes everything more entrained, more efficient. And it's something, no matter what's going on in our lives, there's something to always be appreciative for, right?
Right. I mean, and you gave us some powerful examples where it's like, because if our mind wants to immediately go to the
Yes.
uncertain thing, you gently guided people practicing towards the options, like even the warm sunlight. Nature is still trying to care for us. Yeah. So, anybody listening who's either going through a hard time or finding themselves in a difficult place, which is a lot of people, I hope this
Yeah.
practice can give you some peace and a foundation for exploring this well within us of love and wisdom. No matter what the circumstances may be, some hope could still be there.
Always, like there's always ups and downs in the world. And again, I say that I really do live this book, Thinkers, as
Mm.
someone who's been so much, feel like so trapped in the propelled heart. So in each heart stage, there's practices, mini practices, things you can do while you're driving your car, ways to just keep
Mhm.
building what's called your coherence capacity. Because you don't have to just sit and do this 8 minute practice. You can actually be doing some of the techniques throughout your day, and then you're actually more resilient. You can feel solace during these challenging times. You can start to feel an anchor within, no matter what we're going through. And again, we are all going to go through challenging times. We've been in challenging times. There's more challenging times. It's just part of life. But what we can do is give ourselves more of these heart led tools to find that
The
resilience.
tools. Yeah. This has been so sweet and so grounding and so like nurturing. Thank you, friend.
Oh, thank
It
you
means a
so much,
lot.
Fred. This is amazing because this is the first time we talked so many times over the years, but this is the first time I think we're sharing a conversation between us as soul friends. So it feels so special and sacred. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah, I appreciate you making that note because that just means like our journey continues and it continues to blossom in like new and unexpected ways from this soul connection.
Yes, thank you.
Something special that keeps happening, like two things throughout my whole life. Like my family who know and love you will be like, did you see what Kimmy's doing? Did you see? And sometimes I know and sometimes I don't. And then we celebrate. And then people who don't know you and don't know like our friendship will also come up to me and like want to make it a note. Like in particular, I want to show you Kimberly's work, or I discovered Kim, and it's just like I just smile so much because it's just like it just takes me back all the way to the beginning of how, like, God or the universe, knew that we would have this shared vision, shared mission, shared love of Yoganandaji and spiritual journey. So
It's so amazing. I'm getting
synchronicity.
goosebumps because when we met in a dorm and we were
Yeah.
each other's first friends. And it was a time of, getting to live with friends and leaving home. And there was a lot of, you know, delusions, shall we say. There was
Yeah.
a lot of partying. There was just so much that has filtered out. And yet the soul friendship was there. And again, you just never know how things unfold in life.
And I want to thank you for that time though, Kimbos, because I came for me, it was far away coming from Illinois to DC, and I really didn't know what I was doing. And I was just leaning into all this delusion, like you were saying, just to try to, like you said, make friends, fit in, try to succeed. But I felt seen by you, and you were my first friend and accepted me. And even if we were both like out of place, out of sorts, it was like there was a stability and just like knowing that there was a closeness between us. So all these
Amazing.
years later, that still means a lot to me. So thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been amazing. And, you know, lots more to come, I'm sure.
Absolutely. So to everyone listening, please check out this new book, The Hidden Power of the Five Hearts. Kim also has Solluna, which is the wellness company, and our own podcast, the Feel Good Podcast. So I encourage you to check those resources out and go deeper with this wisdom that she's sharing with us today. How can people keep in touch with your work, or what's the best way for them to find you or find the resources?
Thank you, Finkers. I would say our central hub is the best place, which is mysolluna.com. And I'll also call
Wonderful.
out that there's free guided tracks of the HeartAlign meditation on there, paired with coherence building music. So those are free and available for everyone to check out, as well as many other tools.
Awesome. Once again, thanks for your time, for your smile, for your laughter, for your joy, for your wisdom. Lots of love to you and to your family. It's always good to connect with you.
And to your family, who I feel so
Thank you.
close to, and Eric, your brother, and your parents, so much love.
Appreciate that. Okay.